Hello everyone, and welcome to the final Cognautics video on information security. We are getting towards the conclusion of this topic, but before we finish, we need to cover the measures utilised to protect a company from data breaches. Protective measures fall into three broad categories: policies, physically protecting data, and logically protecting data. I'll look at each of these in turn. I recommend that you use these three headings to create notes on this topic. Creating policies relating to information security ensures that a company is able to be transparent with its staff, customers, shareholders, and legal authorities about how it handles data and how employees are expected to handle data. Equally, these policies ensure that in the case of disaster, there are measures put in place to reinstate a given system. Let's look at staff access rights to information first of all. The principle here is that you would only afford staff access to the information that they require in order to fulfill their role. In doing so, you limit the possibility of data being stolen, deleted, or corrupted. A company should create a policy in order to ensure that this is not just a principle but actually carried through in reality. Now, secondly, most companies require staff to sign a form declaring that they understand how they should handle data. One example may be that staff are not allowed to use removable media to download data, as it's one of the easiest ways for data to be lost. Companies must have policies that cover the training of staff to enable them to control or process data. This training must be carried out on a regular basis. Now, the difference between controllers and processors of data is quite a complex area and beyond the scope of this video. However, a data processor is more concerned with using the data, while a controller has more ownership of the data and is responsible for the collection, maintenance, and ultimately the destruction of the data. Companies should create a policy that highlights the protection measures in place, as well as a risk assessment to determine the likelihood and severity of the threats they face, as well as the impact of these threats. The final policy covers using information gathered in the risk assessment to create a policy that dictates how to support the recovery of systems and data in the case of a disaster, for example, a flood, a fire, a DDoS attack, a virus, or a terror attack. We've got two more protection measures to look at. Let's start with physical protection. Physical protection is concerned with keeping data secure from the standpoint of the physical world. Locks, keypads, security guards, biometrics, these are all examples of physical protection. Typically, these solutions would be leveraged against individual workstations or used to control access to server rooms or sensitive parts of a data center. Thinking again about the dangers of natural disasters, it's clear there needs to be a certain plan in place to ensure that if the data at the company's main site is destroyed, there's a way of recovering. This may be achieved by placing computers above known flood levels and having data backups that are stored in remote locations so that they may be used to get systems up and running again. Companies also have to be aware of the importance of shredding paper records that are no longer required, and of course cleansing the data off any hard drives that are recycled, discarded, or sold by the company. Let's finish by looking at the last category: logical protection. We can define logical protection as using software, or in some cases hardware, to protect data. If we take the example of a bank, the network manager would create tiered levels of access to the data. This would mean that employees would be given a level of access based on their status or function within the bank. I chose the example of a bank because when you think about signing off a loan agreement, maybe 100 employees have the ability to sign off a £10,000 loan, but perhaps only 2 employees have the ability to sign off an agreement over £500,000. The benefit here is clear. A tiered access system enables a bank to mitigate against data theft or fraud. Notice I'm using the word mitigate rather than prevent, because In many cases, it's impossible to prevent any wrongdoing whatsoever. You're simply looking to limit the amount of damage that any particular activity will cause. Another logical solution comes in the form of firewalls. Firewalls examine incoming data packets to ensure that only trustworthy data reaches the system. Any data packets that contain data the firewall deems to be dubious will either be deleted or held in quarantine to be examined at a later stage by the network manager and deleted. Firewalls can be hardware or software or even both. Companies must ensure that anti-malware applications are installed and kept up to date in order to prevent viruses, worms, trojans and ransomware from being purposefully or accidentally installed on a company's network. Now, these definitions, it's really important they're kept up to date, and the way it works is this. The companies that produce the anti-malware software like McAfee or Norton, they release regular updates that contain the names and the signatures of the most recent viruses, and that way they can be located and neutralized. The specification refers to the obfuscation of data, and this is another way of expressing that data may be rendered more difficult to understand by obscuring or hiding its contents. This can be achieved in a number of different ways, with encryption being by far the most popular and widely used. When you encrypt data, you turn the data, known as plain text, into ciphertext, which is a scrambled version of the data. The advantage of this process is that the data is of no use to criminals, even if intercepted as part of a man-in-the-middle attack. When we discuss encryption, it's important to remember that the data itself may be in one of two states, either at rest or in transit. Data at rest can be summarized as data that is currently not being used or accessed, and it's usually stored securely. Data in transit describes data that's moving from one point to another within a system or being accessed. There are different methods of encryption that may be applied to data in each of these two different states. The other best known methods of data obfuscation are tokenization and masking, and while these processes are different to encryption, they do serve the same purpose. We now come to the final method of logical protection, that of passwords. This is the most commonly used and recognized method of protecting data. It is of course important to create long passwords that contain alphanumeric characters as well as special characters, and to avoid using everyday dictionary words. Failure to do so leaves you open to a brute force attack by a hacker. I hope you found these videos useful. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe, and hit that bell if you want to be the first to see new content. Bye bye.